So I'm going to dispense with the introductions of myself this time. You've heard enough of that from me, and I'm also going to dispense with the plug for Surface Navy Association, except to say that please go to www.navysna.org. It is a great organization. You will not be sorry to be part of this. All cuttermen should be a part of this. So today we have a great commanding officer in charge panel up here, and I want to introduce our folks here. Online, we had advertised that Lieutenant Commander David Zwarglis from the Benjamin Bottoms would be here, but he had to cancel due to potential exposure to COVID. He's fine, but in an abundance of caution, he could not be here. And Senior Chief Jason Potta also could not be here because the Sea Otter was recalled for operations. And that's a day in the life of the Coast Guard. In our 231-year history, we will always remain flexible. So, stepping up to bat, and we tried to, early on we discussed whether we could get a national security cutter commanding officer for this, and we thought, no way that's going to be possible. For those in the audience that don't understand, the National Security Cutter is the Coast Guard's flagship, so to speak. It's our largest cutter, 418 feet. They're all over the world as we speak today. And we are very privileged to have Captain Willie Carmichael, the commanding officer of Coast Guard Cutter Midget, with us. He's right to my right here. Previously, he was his other sea duty tours were the Coast Guard Cutter Tahoma, which also had a nickname which I won't bring up here in this forum, and a 110 in Patrol Forces Southwest Asia. And he has been in Southcom before, Captain Willie Carmichael. We have, to his right, Lieutenant Stephen Naylor, Robert Ward, U.S. Coast Guard Cutter Robert Ward, a fast response cutter out of L.A. Long Beach. He's also been afloat quite a bit, Coast Guard Cutters Resolute, Vigilant, and the USS O'Kane. Is that how you say O'Kane?
Yes, sir.
A great Navy ship where he was part of that crew. And then we have, I'm not even going to try the first name, but I will try the second name because I just practiced it with her, Lieutenant Pormanier. Was I close?
Yes, it was.
From the Coast Guard Cutter Haddock, which is an 87. The Coast Guard, which is something I think the Navy should emulate, gives float commands at a very early in the career time. And did you start out as a Lieutenant JG on that vessel, ma'am?
I did.
And so now she's made lieutenant. She'll probably be transferring off. But O2s can command these 87-foot patrol cutters, which, while not large in size, have a very big mission and a huge breadth of operations and responsibility. And the lieutenant will probably talk about what she does in charge of that 87. But we also have a Master Chief bosun mate who's on the panel, because unlike any of the other armed services, the Coast Guard does have enlisted officer in charges. And when I say officer in charges enlisted in command, it's a little bit different than maybe you've heard that OIC word thrown out in other forms with other services, because our OICs are full. I mean, they have NJP authority fully. The Master Chief will be doing the same thing with the same breadth of responsibility as the lieutenant in the same op area. So I'm pretty proud of that. I had several of those commands myself, 82s and 87s, and stations. Actually, it was the best thing I ever did, other than maybe being the Master Chief of the Coast Guard, which was kind of cool. And we also have Command Master Chief returning to us, and my fellow person that's helping run this panel, Command Master Chief Phaedra Hooker, the Coast Guard District 11 Command Master Chief. And we're going to be talking all things in the cutter world, particularly sea duty attractiveness and command opportunities for officers enlisted. So with that said, I'm going to throw it first to Captain Carmichael. Sir, okay, so we have to build the cutter force by a couple of thousand billets. We have all these offshore patrol cutters coming out. We have whole new types of icebreakers coming out, and multiple icebreakers. We got the Waterways Commerce Cutter coming out. So we're going to have quite a fleet when this is all built out, and we need the people
trained and ready to man them. How do you feel what do you feel the Coast Guard needs to do in order to meet this challenge, sir?
Hey, Skip, that's an excellent question. And I think now we need to kind of make sure that we understand what these capabilities, the new capabilities of these platforms are going to bring to the mission set. And we need to be able to kind of link what those capabilities and what type of person we would need to fill those billets for the future, and start building those competencies now within our cutter fleet, and making sure that people can understand that the work that they put in today is going to pay vast dividends for the future. So part of that is some of the strategic messaging plan as far as understanding, linking those capabilities and how that's in service to our nation, and what capabilities and how we really support our nation as public servants. And helping the young cuttermen that are out there now doing the missions and understanding what the next mission set will be and how our missions are evolving for the future, and being able to help them understand that connection, that the work that they're doing now is going to pay huge dividends for the future as well. So with that, requires some type of training, some mentorship, some additional education as well. And we need to kind of start thinking towards the future, to kind of think about what are those training opportunities, what are those opportunities to develop that experience, so that way when they show up, one, they have a desire to remain at sea, and secondly, when they show up for those new platforms, when they become fully operational, they'll be inspired to be able to say, hey, I feel fully prepared to take on the challenges of the future for the Coast Guard, supporting with this particular platform with these new capabilities, and really feel empowered to really get after it with those new capabilities. So it needs to start now. So we see a lot of literature out there about the capabilities, brochures, but we really need to kind of operationalize that, get it down to a personal level so people can actually see what the future holds for them, understanding now that the investments they can make within themselves, within their peers, within their training sets, and us as leaders in developing programs to build that next cutterman for the future.
Yes, sir. And Lieutenant Naylor, now you're on a fast response cutter out of LA Long Beach. And I know, because I deal with the fast response cutters all the time, people think, oh, those guys don't spend months at sea, and it's not quite as arduous. But I find it's a very arduous task, and your crews are underway, or they're on watch, or maybe they're away from their home port, and a lot, I mean, they have a lot of time away from their families. So, if you're looking at this from a work-life standpoint, what can the Coast Guard do to improve that? Are you married? Because I didn't ask that before.
I am.
Okay.
I am. Yep.
So what would your wife say that the Coast Guard could do to improve that work-life capability? Don't feel free not to get so in trouble here that the Commandant gives you a call, but you can, I mean, we want to be real with this audience, right? Because the Coast Guard has this challenge. They've got to make this something that not only when you're old, like we talked about before with Admiral Gaudier, that, hey, I never met a person that was old and retired that didn't talk about their glory days underway. But when you're there in it, that you feel good about being there, even though that you've made that and you're away from your family.
So I think we'll start with, I have it easier because I'm married 18 years to Air Force. Okay. He's been here for 18 years, he'll be retiring in 2 years, and he's ready to go do another job. So he spent almost as much time gone away from home as I do. So it's a little bit easier because I can't get too much for it since he does the same thing. But I think something you had said, we've had a lot of talks among the crew doing some of the bigger ships, including a Navy destroyer and down to a PB. I think comparing the two for different reasons, it definitely takes the same amount of toll. I think some of it for the FRCs is that we are a very capable cutter, extremely more capable than the 110s that we replaced. And I think there is that middle ground where we almost look like a 210 with our capabilities and what we're able to do minus the flight deck, but we have a crew of 24 people. So cases, say just out in San Diego, and this is very similar for the 87s that operate down here, we'll have 2-3 cases a night. Well, on one case, I have everyone except for my 2 cooks on deck. My XO is the deck in the con. Our chiefs are running the deck with our brand new non-rates straight out of boot camp. And we'll finish that case, drop people off at the pier at 3 in the morning and get told, hey, there's another one 30 miles offshore, sprint out there and take care of that one. So you may only be gone for 3 weeks at a time, but you don't get much sleep during those 3 weeks. So then you're home just long enough during those 3 weeks to kind of recharge, say hello to the family, and then you go back out. And that's kind of our typical rotation, at least in the LA AOR and for the FRCs that are down here. We have our few longer imports for maintenance, but that's pretty much a 6 month in, 6 month out over our overall schedule. But I think you would hit it nail on the head. One of the things I learned very quickly, and something I've been told, my father did 32 years in the military, he's like, hey, I think you gotta look at it this way as a CEO. You're never gonna feel like you're going to work if you love your job. He's like, and that's how you want your guys to feel. If you can make the guys and gals that work for you love their job every day, that outweighs those downsides like being gone from the family. So I think some of those things are as easy for COs and OICs to say, hey, this is the things you accomplished this patrol. So Sector San Diego sends us and says, hey, last patrol you had 5 interdictions. Here's what happened with all those. 2 went to court. We had these different outcomes. You got this much drugs valued at this. And the crew loves hearing that stuff. They're like, I made a difference. And doing some of those small things like giving a guy or a gal on a cutter and saying, here's your 24-hour Liberty Pass because you did a great job on that case yesterday. It doesn't cost us anything as a command to do that, but it means the world to them to get that kind of recognition. So I think my limited experience on the FRC, I definitely think command climate probably plays the biggest role in getting people to want to stay afloat. And it's arguably, in my opinion, probably the hardest one to maintain too, because I only have 24 people. I can't imagine 130 plus or 330 on a destroyer. Everyone's different. Everyone has different wants and needs. So I think it's pretty hard to get that balance, to keep everyone happy. And I found that the happier the crew is, the better I look as a CO, because the ship does great operationally. So that's really my big goal. And then Coast Guard wise, I think we've done a pretty good job so far. Like you had mentioned, they've created this panel or group to kind of take a look at sea duty attractiveness. And I think they've done a good job so far taking a look at what they can do immediately, like sea duty pay and reallocating that to try to encourage junior members to stay afloat and try to make immediate changes, but then looking at long-term ones that'll take a little bit. I'll tell you from the destroyer, we were able to get Facebook or personal email. We were able to keep in touch with family in more ways. Connectivity is better on those ships. So when you have to do your 2-factor authentication to get on your USAA bank account to pay bills, you can do that on a Navy ship. I can't do that on the FRC. There's no personal email. There's no cell phone service. So it's kind of hard to manage that stuff back home when you're underway on the cutters. But these are things that take infrastructure and long-term changes. So I think so far it's been a pretty good job in figuring out what we can change immediately to help, and things that we've identified as a Coast Guard that will take longer, but yes, we know these are things we got to work on. So those are some of the few things that have kind of gone through the few times I've had that conversation.
Now that's a great answer, and I was going to make a joke about the fact that you were married to an Air Force member, and did they really ever, go away for a while? I mean, I'm just kidding you, because my partner in crime, Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Roy, who I'm still in business with, I don't think he'll ever see this SNA live stream, but I don't want him all over me about it. Well, the Air Force is a fellow service for sure.
And he does recruiting he's a deputy for recruiting, so now he recruits Space Force. So I have like 2 things to kind of go at it with, but no. It's
one time somebody said, the Coast Guard, is that military? And I said, you're Air Force, isn't that the pot calling the kettle black?
Oh, absolutely.
That's a fact.
It's some good family. We have Army, Marine Corps, Air Force, Navy, and Coast Guard all in the immediate family. So it's some good family get-togethers.
There you go. So, Lieutenant, recently we have these continuing the conversation series with Surface Navy Association, and recently we did one. Actually, we did one on sea duty attractiveness, and to my, at least to do some for indemnification. I was really only going to have the gold, the gold ancient mariner, and the captain that was in 751 be on this panel. But all of a sudden, I had Master Chief of the Coast Guard Vander Hayden in, and then I had somebody else that wanted, Admiral Bushman that wanted to be on it. And then we had a panel of all white males, all over age. And then somebody said, there's no females on this panel. And man, I beat up on that. So then we asked the CEO of Training Center, Kate May, to be on the panel, which really helped with perspective. Again, please don't judge me on that. I was really only going to have 2 people originally. But I should have thought of that. And so then, because we had such a large demand, we had an entire session with female cuttermen. And I thought it was a really eye-opening session for me. So you're clearly an accomplished female cutterman. Are you planning personally to stay in the afloat career path, or are you going to do something else? It's not going to be a judgment call, but it's a question.
So I love the afloat community, and I openly, in any forum, will discuss both the positives and the negatives. And I do think that there are a lot of positives. I think the sense of belonging that I feel at sea is something I'm never going to find again in the Coast Guard or in the civilian sector. However, since I was in 8th grade, my passion and my goal has always been to become a lawyer. So I actually, while I've been afloat my entire coming up on 5 years as an officer, I applied to the Coast Guard legal program and was selected as an alternate, and that is definitely my end goal. It is one of those career paths in the Coast Guard because we are short in the afloat community officers, where I could potentially stay afloat or go full legal and not have a subspecialty as an afloat officer. And I'm not committed either way. I'm leaning a little bit towards, if I get picked up for law school, maintaining just my legal specialty and not necessarily my afloat specialty. But I think that has more to do with the requirement to go to a bigger afloat unit, to go to a big white hole, and to leave for an extended period of time, which if I had done earlier in my career, I would probably enjoy. But I think I'm going to want to settle down in a few years, and when I get to that point, I don't know if I'll still want to go afloat, but it's definitely something I'm not getting rid of. It's something I'm still going to openly consider. I'm leaning towards law school and focusing on the legal field.
Well, that's okay, because no judgment up here. And, you know, all of my lawyer jokes I put away as you were speaking. And Cal Lederer, who's a really good friend of mine, is probably listening to this. He's the Coast Guard, actually the senior civilian lawyer. And it's a great opportunity, but I hope you do think about coming back afloat. I had a lieutenant, I was on an 82 commanded by Lieutenant JG named Joe Ray. And one of the greatest things that it was a disappointment in life is he went off into a different part of the Coast Guard, the cutter stuff, which that guy had talent. And I think you probably got talent too. And you know, we want to keep our talented workforce in the cutter community, but we want smart lawyers too. That's really important. Keep people like me out of trouble. So thank you very much for that answer, but it was an honest answer. And the Coast Guard needs to grapple with this. For instance, with 33% or better of the Coast Guard Academy graduates being female, and at the same time, they want to grow this cutter community, the Coast Guard must rise to this challenge of motivating and keeping females in that cutter community. And there's a number of different things and a number of different, which I won't go into right now, but we've got to rise to that channel. So CMC Hooker, I think you have a question for the Master Chief.
Well, actually, since you spoke about that, I was going to ask, Lieutenant P told me, I'm just going to say Lieutenant P, she told me as we were speaking off to the side just before we got started that 4 of the XOs that she transferred from Bahrain with are all COs, women, female COs on cutters right now.
Yeah, so
I mean,
there was 5 female officers in all of Bahrain. 4 were XOs of cutters, and 1 was a commanding officer over there. All 5 of us came back to the U.S. and took command of stateside boats.
So I think that's impressive, to be honest with you. So great job, and thank you for stepping up for that. And then I just have one other. I know, Lieutenant Nelson, you already kind of talked about sea duty attractiveness and how command climate is kind of important, right, on your cutter. For the panel, are there other things we can do at the unit levels to make people kind of return customers and want to come back and go to sea again? I'll start with you, Master Chief.
Okay. So I think the biggest thing, it does start with command climate, right? But also starts with the totality of everything. So stemming from operations, the port calls, the things that you go to sea to do, right? So as far as the retention problem goes, I don't really think that there's necessarily a retention problem in the afloat side of the community. I think you have a lot better of camaraderie and a lot better of rapport underway, because like Captain was saying and Admiral earlier, like when you're a tight-knit group, especially on a PB of just 11 people compared to bigger ships, like I can't even imagine being on an aircraft carrier and having to try to control that command climate where you may not even meet some of the crew members until a few months in after your first initial briefing. That can be quite a challenge, but I don't think it's an issue on the 87s, at least that I've seen.
Okay. Any other thoughts on, because we know that the Coast Guard is, offering sea pay, increasing sea pay and offering bonuses. I'm talking about like at the unit level, what can we do to make going to sea more desirable for people?
I think the captain brought up a really good point about training. Some of the things I'd heard from some of the folks on my cutter was that they didn't quite understand how the FRC was going to be different from a 110. So quite a few of them had sailed on 110s before, and they went to a fast response cutter not realizing it was going to be treated almost closer to a major cutter than a PB. We get treated way closer to a 210 than we do an 87. With the different missions, we have ones that go down and operate with the major cutters down in the Eastern Pacific and down in the Eastern and Western Carib doing Dryad of South patrols. And I think some of it is the training, saying, hey, this is what to expect of these different units. These are the different mission sets they do, but also creating that understanding of everything that you're going to accomplish. And I think that's kind of where the big thing is, like at the end of a patrol saying, hey, this is everything you've done. Or if you're trying to encourage someone to go to a Wimsel or a bigger cutter that does some of these longer patrols, saying, hey, this is the impact you make on these cutters. Yeah. But I think some of it are the people that tend to be unhappier ones that didn't quite understand what they were getting themselves into. The ones that go in there open-eyed and realize, hey, on a Wimsel you're going to be gone potentially 3 months, or if you're doing a Westpac patrol, potentially longer than that, but these are the things you're going to do while you're doing it. Yeah. I think that helps a lot as well. Okay. And I definitely think the ones that were the happiest when I showed up on this cutter were ones that I knew what to expect, than ones that are like, I didn't think I was going to be gone 3-4 weeks on a PB on an FRC. So I think some of that is definitely the training for our folks.
All right, thank you, sir.
And I would like to say that first and foremost, we have to make going to sea fun. I would say some of my most biggest memories that I have is with my shipmates being out at sea. And you don't get those experiences in other areas, not likely. And we need to be able to kind of hone in on that as well. And kind of being able to have a real discussion about risk. When I came into the Coast Guard, you worked hard and you played hard. But now we know better, and we're more informed about things. And I think as we started to learn more about, the playing hard aspect of it, and also the working hard aspect of it as well, we almost develop a culture of risk aversion. Mm-hmm. And when you get into this culture of risk aversion, sometimes when you have the hard mission sets out there, the long hours, and time away from your families, going to sea sometimes it's not as enjoyable as it could have been. And I think from a leadership's perspective, having an honest and frank conversation about risk and how to be able to articulate the risk and develop the skills to actually minimize risk, so that way you can challenge people and you can create an environment where you actually experience growth for those junior cuttermen out there, and they feel like, hey, I may not do something absolutely perfect, but I learned from the experience and I can do it better the next time. And I think creating those opportunities for our junior cuttermen to be able to say, hey, I learned a lot on that first tour or that second tour. I want to come back because I am a better cutterman, I'm a better coastie, I'm a better shipmate after going through those experiences. I think a little bit outside the lifelines that may be within our control as well is having more of these types of events. The Coast Guard is going to more of a clustered model with a lot of our assets, having these super bases where you have larger cutters like national security cutters, home ported with FRCs and other assets that are predominantly filled with cuttermen. I think we need to, when Admiral says, hey, the leadership owns this CD, the attractiveness piece, we definitely own it. But we have to develop the skills to own it and get after it. So being able to create that culture, that good climate and culture within the lifelines, but also outside the lifelines, by going down on the pier, down on the waterfront, talking to the 87 skippers, the FRC skippers, and kind of having that conversation and sharing those stories about those tough moments out at sea and how we learned and how we grew for those tough moments. I think those would be those opportunities provide skills and experience to our junior cuttermen. So as they're thinking about what's in the grand scheme of their larger plan, as far as, I would never like to have somebody be having to choose between trying to be a professional lawyer or trying to be a cutterman. I would like that conversation to be, hey, you can have it both. There's opportunities, the way the Coast Guard's set up with our unique authorities, that the lieutenant can actually do both. But unless somebody comes in and kind of has that conversation, kind of saying, hey, well, if you want to go along this career path and have two career paths, these are some of the key points, key timelines that you might want to kind of consider, and then provide them the information as well too. So, within the lifelines, you got to make it fun. You got to be open, got to be approachable, and it all speaks to Lieutenant's thoughts about having that climate of openness, frank discussions, and honestly some humility as well too. If they can see that from our senior leadership, I think we'll have our junior cuttermen desiring, being motivated to come back to sea.
And you said it a second ago, leadership and command climate.
Yep.
Quite frankly, on these smaller units, and relative to the Navy, even the captain's unit is small, I think leadership failures are magnified pretty quickly through that command climate. I used to go up, and I'm thinking of one actually in Pac area, a place where you could have 378A, which the 378 used to be our largest ship, and 378B, directly across the dock from each other. All the folks on there live in the same places.
Yep.
They all have the same op area. They're doing the same things, but 378A, everybody hated life on it. And it was a known fact.
Yeah.
And they would have never gone back to that unit. And 378B, for some reason, had a pretty good attitude, even though there was a lot of family separation and other arduous tasks going on. And the difference came down to leadership and command climate. And so, I mean, that's free.
Yeah.
You just got to find a way to bottle it. And but I will say that the current Coast Guard, and I'll say this right now, to all the old cronies that are out there that always talk about the old guard. The old guard, while it had great people, also had some people that were not so great. And I'm sure that the new Coast Guard has that too, but in less numbers. There's no doubt in my mind.
I agree.
I mean, that's the truth.
I agree with that.
So I had texted you a question for the Master Chief.
Oh, I have my other phone, so I don't have it. I don't have the question, so no question, no. You'll have to ask the question, Skip, because I don't have.
Okay, so this came from a senior chief.
Yep.
Who's a bosun mate.
Yep.
And he is very concerned. The bosun mate rating is a pyramid. Certain number of master chiefs at the top, certain number of BM3s at the bottom of the pyramid. And for a long time now, we've had 82s and 87s in great numbers at the top of that pyramid, where budding bosun mates coming up could look forward to being in command. And now many of those 87s are being decommissioned, and there doesn't appear to be an acquisition to replace them. Do you have concerns about this?
So that's the million-dollar question that we all ask. So I've asked it myself when Admirals visit, and it's recently come up at the last visit that we had. So by 2036, all the 87s are going to be decommissioned, and I don't know the exact number right now, I think it's like 72 that are still online right now, and we just decommed, I think 5 or 6 just this past recently year. So what I would like to see and what I hope is that the more that we have the smuggling events that we're having on the southern border here, and the more that the Coast Guard is showing, like, hey, we still, what 2,000 more people is what the Admiral was saying. We got the commerce cutters coming online. My hope would be that with the acquisition of the new commerce cutters, and hopefully there will be a replacement, maybe they'll see the need 10 years down the road, hey, we do need a replacement for a coastal patrol vessel of some sort that maybe can mimic the capabilities of what the FRCs do, because we're pretty limited on what we can do on the 87, because we only have 11 to 12 people max, and we don't have that pursuit coxswain capability that they do, where they can respond to vessels, where they can stop them at sea using pursuit and tactic capabilities. That being said, with the OPCs coming online, here in a few years, say 10 years, 15 years from now, when all the 87s are offline, what are we going to do with the 87, senior chiefs and master chief billets? My hope would be that by that time, we can start to take command of some of the FRCs that are out there, or maybe even do like a blue gold program where there are 24 personnel enlisted that take over for the officer side of the crew, similar to what we did with the high tempo, high maintenance program down in Key West and Miami and St. Petersburg, Florida back in 2010 to 2012 timeframe, where they would go out, do a 3-week patrol, come back for a week, do a full maintenance week and repair week, and they do a full turnover of the crew, and then they take it out for 3 weeks. So I think that would hopefully solve the problem of keeping those senior chiefs and master chief billets and not being dissolved. That also with the OPCs coming out and the NSCs, with a few more, maybe those billets are going to go to CMC type billets afloat on those units. I think that would be a good win for keeping those billets as well.
That what you just said works really well if you have a really strong MAT team.
A really strong what?
MAT team to help turn that around, keep things maintained.
Yep.
But that's what we found when the 123s went down in the 2000s, is the MAT teams were absolutely important. That's the reason why the 110s in Pat Forsois have stayed. At one time they were kind of the best maintained in the entire fleet because of the maintenance capability right there in Bahrain, where they were constantly being refurbished.
Absolutely.
But it takes a strong MAT team to do what you're talking about. And I will say for 751, because I hear a lot of bosun mates from the cheap seats here, I'm retired, asking that question that the senior chief asked. They should, that is one way to go at it. Hey, this is affecting our bosun mate pyramid, and we need command opportunities. But another way to look at it is also, it's a capability gap that will grow. No FRC is going to go into many places on the eastern shore of Virginia that an 87 can. No FRC will ever go into many places on the west coast of Florida. They're going to be restricted to Tampa, St. Pete, for the entire west coast of Florida, where you won't get to Sarasota, Fort Myers, Clearwater, any of the places the 87s can now go into.
Yeah.
And there will be a large and growing, name the place, that'll be a capability gap, which you don't want to wait too late to discover when you put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Though, from where I sit, I would love the Coast Guard to buy more FRCs. So. Anyway, so that's 2 cents from the cheap seats on that. Vader?
I have another question for the Master Chief.
Okay.
So as Skip said when he introduced y'all, both you and Lieutenant Pete are COs of, or in command of 87s. Yep. Do you, from your perspective, have challenges that maybe an officer doesn't have, as a CO of a cutter, or vice versa for the enlisted?
Honestly, I don't know if we'd have different challenges. I know you had a lot of personnel issues, for a while, where I didn't really have that problem for my first couple of years here. Again, going back to the afloat assignments and the fact that we need more females afloat, I had the afloat detailer women's assignment coordinator reach out to me and was like, hey, would you be willing to take females? And I was like, yeah, why is that even a question? As long as they can correlate to the transfer season and they can come in, because we have to have so many rack spaces with berthing rooms and assignments. I was just like, yeah, of course I can. So I don't know if I would consider that a challenge, but it's definitely something that we were able to make work, and I think it's all for the better. We were able to give we actually got orders for a female non-rate that was too soon, and she needed one. And I was just like, hey, can we do this? Because my non-rate hasn't left for school yet, and my incoming CS2, who's a female, won't be reporting until July. So we were able to get her a female non-rate a lot sooner than what was promised to her. So I think that was a good thing as well.
Okay, thank you. What about you, ma'am? I mean, as an officer, because the crux of the question was, as an enlisted member, do you feel like, as an enlisted member in command, do you feel your challenges are different from an officer in command?
I don't think so, because we're groomed for that. We're groomed for that assignment, right? We have a rigorous process to go through the OIC boards, similar to their 4 years of going to school to become an officer, and they're groomed for command afloat, where we do the officer board, officer in charge review board process. So I think the challenges, I would say the challenges are the same. There may be some differences, but it's the same way to be ready for that assignment as a officer in charge CO.
Perfect answer.
Yeah.
What about you, ma'am? I mean,
I think there's a stigma associated, and I've heard it my entire career, like the JO versus the Master Chief vote. Like the Master Chief's gonna stick up when something's not right and advocate on the crew, and the JO is just gonna do whatever they're told. And I think you'll find that's not super accurate. 9 times out of 10, we know what we should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And it's not a judgment question. Like, are you going to do that when you shouldn't? It's an experience. What's the best way to make sure that people understand this isn't, it's not gonna happen. So I've gotten really lucky between Master Chief and Senior Chief on both 87s down here. Anytime I have a question, I can call and talk it out. And 9 times out of 10, I know the right answer. I might not have the experience to back it up. So I think that on any cutter, you're gonna have that feeling of what your crew needs, and it's gonna differ, right? So the struggles and the issues that we face are a little bit different than Master Chiefs probably face. I think it has nothing to do with my rank and everything to do with the people. But I think Master Chief touched on a really good point. We are fighting for this inclusion and this diversity, and the Coast Guard's made amazing strides towards it. And we're getting to a point where we're actively making those changes to advocate on behalf of those things, like having extra females underway. But it's definitely a mentality that needs to shift, and that is shifting. It used to be, are you okay with taking females? And it needs to be, we're taking females. And I think we've done in San Diego a great job of that. I have an entire forward berthing of females, which is the larger of the 2 berthings, which I don't think a lot of 87s in the Coast Guard got there. And we have a similar setup to the fast response cutters in our berthing, and the fast response cutters for the most part have females. So I think it's definitely something we're able to do. It's definitely something we're pushing to do. And I think that mentality and that mindset changing is what the Coast Guard needs to kind of adjust and acclimate and really put an emphasis on inclusion and diversity, which I think we've done a really good job of.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you both. That was exactly what I was looking for, to be honest with you, to kind of bring the point home that you're an enlisted person in command, and your responsibilities and challenges are no different from an officer who's in command. So thank you both for your comments on that.
That's a great answer. So here's a question for Peter Ong from Naval News. Does the U.S. Coast Guard plan to extend the Mark 38 Mod 3 with 7.62 military coax, chain gun, and the Mark 19 40mm AGL to the rest of the FRC fleet beside the Persian Gulf? Any plans for more FRC firepower modifications? Lieutenant, what do you know?
Ooh, dodge that.
Don't speculate if you don't know. You guys aren't in the program, so but if you know something, go ahead and say.
I don't know what I can and can't say about.
Right now, there is no major changes to swapping out the small caliber, major caliber for FRC weapon mount. I believe they have the 25mm Mod 1, which is remote controlled from the pilot house as well. Based on a lot of the mission sets that the FRCs will be charged to do, most of that is going after a particular threat that they have enough firepower to counteract that threat. And most of the operations they're doing currently is they're integrated with a lot of different assets as well. So if there was a situation that required a higher level and more power or the ability to throw more lead down range, there's a great deal of backup support that the FRCs can kind of call in to kind of bring the pain. So it's not a concern.
Yes, sir. So no Harpoon missiles in the future for
No.
FRCs.
I would agree with the captain. The 25 is pretty much covered 99.9% of the time, unless we're doing a gun X The 50 cals are generally enough for our mission set for any type of deterrence that we may actually need or have. Now, Bahrain's a little bit different, and obviously their weapons are a little more ready use than ours are down here operating in Southern California off the coast of Mexico. But I have not heard, and I have a friend over there right now, of any changes being made to the FRC when it comes to armament between the U.S. and over in Pat-Francois.
Yes, sir. So here's a question. What was, and I guess this is for the whole panel, what was your aha moment that made you both excited and proud to be on a cutter? And we'll start with the captain.
I would say the aha moment for me was the first day I got underway as a new CO. That was maybe my third or fourth tour, and taking in that last line and not having somebody over my shoulder that I could look to and be like, hey, am I doing this the right way? And when they say, you know, the CO's authority is absolute, they're spot on. But that aha moment for me was the fact that, you know, I had to be humble. I had to really rely on my team because my first command was across the globe, and you know, something as simple as a different buoyage system, you know, the buoy colors were reversed, and you know, being able to trust my team and you know, keep us in safe water to actually do the mission as well, it really kind of brought it all together for me as like what it actually means to be a commanding officer, and the amount of responsibility that comes with that title. That was a tremendous aha moment for me, but I'm glad I had the chance to experience it. Keep that lesson in my back pocket in every situation I go through up to this point. And one thing we can never forget is that even with vast amounts of sea time and you know, time in service, you're always learning. You're always evolving as well. So I always go back to that moment to kind of say, hey, stay hungry, stay after it, continue to evolve, continue to grow, continue to challenge yourself, and that just makes you a better officer and a better cutterman in the long run.
Yes, sir.
So I'm trying to narrow down my aha moment, and I would say I kind of have a slightly different answer, almost two. One was definitely my entire family's military, and I thought it was really cool when I enlisted and showed up to a Coast Guard cutter as a non-rate straight out of boot camp. And the goal right when I got on board was to get my BTM cert. I had only been in the Coast Guard for 3 months, and I was already doing boardings. I was doing these things, and one of the things my father had said, he's like, I can't believe you're doing that. He's like, I was in for 20 years before 9/11 happened, before I really got to do what my job was, and that required a tragic event to take place in the globe. He goes, you get to go do this training, and the very next day you're doing that mission, regardless of what it is. And I thought that was cool, that I knew any training I was going to do in the Coast Guard, I could go do the very next day. I didn't have to hope for this tragic event to happen or to go over to a wartime. We're a life-saving service. Anything I do has some nexus to that theme. And then I will almost back to that CO part that the captain had said, I think at the end of every patrol since I've taken command, I've had that aha moment. Not one patrol has been like the next. Every one has been something very different, whether it be a human smuggling case or counter drug, and I've done 3 or 4, 20 or 30 of those, everyone's been different. And I think every time I look back and I'm like, I can't believe as a 30-year-old when I took command, this is something that I can help be a part of and be in charge of and have this type of impact at this age or at this scale. So I think that aha moment happens pretty much every patrol. Or when I do a checkout, this transfer season was my first transfer season, and having someone that's been in for 22 years, like one of my chiefs, come up and say, hey sir, if you were here last year, I probably would have extended another year. And I think that's cool when you've only been in for 9 years, having someone that's been in for 20 or 25 say you made that kind of impact too. So I would say almost every day since I've been a CO is a new aha moment, just in a different way.
Outstanding.
I think every single day you realize the amount of responsibility and the burden that comes with being a CO. But I think my aha moment was definitely within the first couple days of getting underway. I'd only been a CO for about a week and a half, and the first week we didn't have to do any operations, so it was really nice. And I think I expected to kind of come in and get acquainted and figure out how everything works and slowly get into the different operations. And I had experience in drug and migrant interdiction, but never obviously in command. So my second day, we interdicted 1,000 pounds of marijuana without any intelligence. We just happened upon a boat, found some suspicious things, and my crew was able to identify some indicators. And I was really excited. My second day underway, and I already had a 1,000-pound drug bust, which spoke nothing about my abilities, my skills, my judgment, and everything about the training and the quality of the crew members that I had on board. But then later that night, we had been up all day between taking the vessel, seizing it, transferring it to Customs and Border Patrol agents. We hadn't really gotten any sleep, and 30 minutes after we all called it a night and got ready for our watches the next day, we then got diverted to a panga very far offshore in Mexican waters that had illegal migrants. So 24 hours later, on absolutely no sleep, within my first 3 days of taking command afloat, we had done 1,000 pounds of drug interdiction operations, and we had taken 17 illegal migrants and processed them to Customs and Border Patrol. And I definitely didn't expect that, like day 1, 2, 3. But the ability of my crew to just step in and full push ahead, get all of those things done without skipping a beat, especially when we had lost a few people in transfer season and we weren't at full capacity, it just spoke volumes. And then the moment I was on the bridge and I was the only qualified OOD and they were all on scene with a vessel, I realized how much responsibility and how much trust the Coast Guard put in me as a lowly JG, because I hadn't made 03 yet. And I think it made me realize that the service really does trust you, and they really do rely and depend on you. And the ability to do what the Coast Guard and the mission needs at such a junior rank, it just spoke volumes to not just the crew, but the entire sector down here in the operations that we do in San Diego.
Outstanding. Go ahead, Master
Guess I'm
Chief.
left, right? So I was thinking about it, and I'd probably tie it up to two things. So I had just taken, we just finished the change of command, and hey, I'm the new OIC of Cutter Amberjack up in Jonesport, Maine, but we did our change of command ceremony in Portland. And my first underway trip, you know, we just get underway. It lasted all of about 10 minutes. All we were doing was shifting berths. But that, you know, that pride and that moment that you feel like, oh wow, I'm in command. And then we just go across the river there, and we tie up, and it's right behind the first cutter I was ever stationed on, which was the Ocracoke. And I was just like, wow, it's kind of funny, you know, it comes like full circle back. Like here I was, my first cutter, and then now here I am, officer in charge of, you know, the Amberjack there. So I'd say that was probably like the first one. And then the second one was we were doing some drills for either RFO or TISTA, and a good friend of mine, Dave Allen, some of you might know who he is. He went from made Master Chief, then Warrant, now he's a lieutenant. He said, you know, take time to just step back one day and just leave the bridge and just watch. And I did that whenever we were doing a TISTA or RFO drill, and I was just standing in back and just watching the crew do each one of their jobs just to the T, and just smoking through that drill was just like, yeah, this is where it's at right here. You know, being in command of 87, I may be a little biased, but is the best job, you know, in the Coast Guard, especially for a senior enlisted senior chief or master chief. To be in command afloat it's a very prideful thing. So,
Outstanding. So my first underway period, I took over Point Turner out of Rhode Island and Goat Island. And they said, hey, First District, you're going to have the SAR guard for 2 weeks up in Maine. I'd never even been to Maine driving. But they said, first, you got to go outside of closed area 1, patrol the Hague line, and then go into Portland. And I thought, crap, you know how far that is? It's like 200 miles offshore. I said, we can make it out there, but we can only patrol for like 4 hours. And they said, that's what we want you to do. So we went up there, and by the way, there is no line there. I'm sure you found that out. Yep. There's no line in the Hague line. I patrolled 4 hours, and then I just went into Portland, Maine and got fuel. But some amazing stuff. So folks, we're going to have to wrap this up, but we talked about the Cutter community, staying in the Cutter community, why you should be in the Cutter community. I'll wrap this up with Command Afloat. You know, a great mentor of mine told me, this is an awesome leader in the Coast Guard. He's still alive, still with us. He told me there is nothing like command. When you affect the mission through your people, these noble missions that the Coast Guard has, through your people, through empowering them, through motivating them, through helping them be better people. And these small crews can only, it is such a great thing in life. It is the most amazing. I would still be doing it if the Coast Guard let me. So panel, captain, lieutenant, master chief, and the command master chief of D11, thank you very much for today. We are going to have, don't leave if you're viewing, because we got this really awesome Chief's Call coming up, Navy and Coast Guard, and then we're going to have a reception here, which if you're viewing, you won't be able to take part, but we will be out there for you. So thank you very much.